Hello, hello.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Good morning to some.
Yeah, hello. Good afternoon.
Hello. Just admitting everyone.
Yeah. Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning. It's weird saying morning at midday our time.
Dinosaur London.
Mark, dinosaur in London. Love that. Hi, Mark. Simply go with Brian. Oh, Brian, look at that. You've got a nice recommendation.
Wow. That is
Mark,
pretty
we might need a separate conversation on your love for Brian. Hi, Jim. Morning, morning.
Hi. Good morning. Good afternoon.
We'll have to take a screenshot of this. I love this.
I will be
really. This is really the best endorsement ever read.
Mark, can you write an endorsement for me and Daniel after this? It looks like that. That'd be great.
I'll make sure to invite you to our next webinar, Mark.
Yep.
Of course, we'll have to convince you, right? Still, but Brian seems to have done that.
Brian's backhander was very, very generous. So you ask him what sort of sums we're talking about, and we'll see what we can do.
Yeah, how much did you pay Mark for that, Brian? That low.
Partly based, by the way, on the superb praise from Nestle and the fabulous simulation profitability built for them.
Yeah, well, we've got Dominic from Nestle on the call, so hopefully you can back up that that recommendation.
As far as I understood, they loved it.
Still using it now, Mark. So
Dominic has thumbs up, I see. So.
Yeah.
I'm here. Yeah, great training.
In fact, I think you may be the only people providing really integrous return on learning.
We'll take
along with Daniel.
Maybe there will be a second company that can prove that. But I really rather prefer having it in a combination. I think that's when the return is even biggest. But we'll get to that later. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Some familiar names. So.
Yeah, lots of familiar names and some nice new faces, which is good. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, perhaps.
Hello, Yas.
Hi, Will.
I will.
You should be automatically muted when you join, but yeah, once we kick off, if everybody could just make sure they're on mute, just so there's no background noise, that would be nice. Still lots of people coming in, so.
From Riyadh. Oh, nice. That's
nice.
Fantastic. Riyadh, Prague.
Gosh.
Very cool.
Graham's late as usual. That's cool.
He's only the CEO, right?
Now that he's handed off hosting the webinars, he's just rocking up very casually, I see. Right?
Now he's just another guest.
No worries.
And please do feel free to enjoy your lunches if you want. Like this a lunch and learn session as well.
Yeah, if you've got anything good for lunch, don't say what it is because I'll get food envy.
Daniel, you said you were going to provide lunch for us.
Yeah, it's in the metaverse.
Good.
It's there. You have to pick it up. Order
Very
the budget
low calorie.
Or breakfast here in Baltimore. Yeah, nice, Carol. Hope you're having something nice for
Good
breakfast.
morning, US. Fantastic.
Greg, crew's pretty glamorous. Yeah, we can roll with glamorous crew.
Oh, lasagna. I'm here in Italy actually today, but I don't have a lasagna ready. Actually learn my lesson.
Because Daniel, you raised the question, what will be on the metaverse menu?
I mean, it's very diverse, you know. It'd be impossible. I don't think the 50 minutes are enough to explain the whole menu.
And we can have really healthy metaverse calories, yeah?
Yes, I think that's a big advantage of the metaverse. We don't get fat while eating. It's fantastic.
I think there might be still some people joining, but I think let's kick off, Daniel, if you're happy to.
Sure.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning, good evening to everyone who's joining. Nice to see lots of familiar faces, familiar names, and a lot of new ones today. So welcome to what I think it's the 4th webinar in our Human and Digital series. I'm sure Brian or Graham will correct me if I'm wrong. For those that haven't met me or don't know me, I am Yasmin and I'm a senior client partner at ProfitAbility. So I'm going to be hosting today's webinar alongside Daniel from CoachHub, who should have been providing lunch for everybody but has failed miserably on his first task. So we're going to be talking all things change management today. We're going to be talking about sort of how we go about change enablement, transformation, and Daniel's going to be offering his insight into the current state of change, what that might look like in different organisations that he's worked with, what good might look like from his experience, and what some of the typical challenges and mistakes that he's seen being made by organisations when they're looking at implementing new change initiatives. There's going to be lots of polls, it was a bit of an exaggeration, a few polls, but lots of opportunities for you to share your own experience, comment, question. Please do use the raise hand feature if you want to jump in on anything, if there's some interesting insight that you want to offer. This definitely isn't going to be a death by PowerPoint or chalk and talk. So yeah, I'd like to kickstart things off. Daniel, do you want to give a bit of a brief overview of your background, your role at CoachHub, and how you got there?
Yeah, wonderful. So thank you everyone for joining. Thanks for having me, ProfitAbility. And by the way, couldn't agree more to the statement put out in the beginning about Brian and ProfitAbility, and really excited to also be partnering up on some projects. So my name is Daniel Breitweiser. For those of you who find it difficult to pronounce, you can also call me Budweiser. That's what they actually do in Brazil. I am German, Brazilian, Italian by blood. I'm actually right now in Italy in an apartment that we have, but usually I'm in Berlin, in the headquarters also where CoachHub is. And my role is a strategic enterprise transformation consultant. That sounds very fancy. But honestly, I do see that title really reflected in my work. It is actually what I do on a day-to-day basis. I work with executives of the largest companies in the world. I'm responsible for pretty much the largest clients that CoachHub has. And I work with them on really identifying what are the transformation and change projects that they really care about, that are really important for the future of the company, and how we can use what we do, which I would like to call as transformation or change as a service, by scaling one-on-one enablement through the means of one-on-one coaching in our digital scalable platform, to all levels really in the organization. And that's also only the way how transformation can succeed, if all levels are changed. And that's what we will speak today about a little bit more. Maybe a good addition as well. I do run a podcast called Transformation Universe. So I'm all about transformation. I love to transform myself on an ongoing basis, but also to really understand what are the transformations that we need to go through as a society. So we have a podcast where we interview thought leaders from politics, psychology, really politics, business and society. Sorry, that was what I was looking for at the intersection. And it's really enriching to get to know a lot of these people, their perspectives. 2/3 of the content is in German, 1/3 about that is in English. So happy to forward some interesting episodes also after this webinar today.
Yeah, for sure. So after the webinar, we will be sharing our LinkedIn and a link to Daniel's podcast. So if anyone's interested in connecting, then it'd be great to speak with as many of you as possible. Thanks very much, Daniel, for that. And in terms of sort of what change and transformation means, like what would be your definition of those words? What does that mean or look like to you?
Right, exactly. I think that it's really crucial because I don't know if there is one person who has the perfect definition of it. I think I once had a presentation that I witnessed in Vienna, where someone really compared transformations with a caterpillar who turns into a butterfly. So basically, going from one state of the company to another one, right? That might be through really intense restructuring, new business models, new products, complete new ways of working, to really transform the company as a whole. Change, I would say, is rather an evolvement of what the company does today, so not as significant. However, when it comes to change management and change enablement, I think change management and change enablement is what is crucial part of any transformation that needs to happen, because a transformation will cause change across the whole organization. And that means that structures, processes, and most importantly, we will talk about this in a bit, mindsets and behaviors have to change. So that's where change enablement and change management become really crucial and central.
Brilliant, thank you. And I mean, I guess it'd be interesting to think about who on this call, who's joined us today, has experience of such transformation process, where they might be in that journey. So I'm just going to launch a poll, which hopefully should come up on your screens, and if you wouldn't mind answering, what is your experience of a transformational change process? So are you in the middle of one right now? Have you been through one and succeeded? Have you been through one and failed? Or were you completely oblivious to what transformation means until today?
Yeah, super curious to also learn more about the audience, where you're at. Potentially even where you're working with companies, right? Some of you might not be a consultant or smaller company working with large companies.
Looks like there was a bit of a mix up on the polls, where I've entered the middle of a transformation twice. So we'll combine the top two answers. Yeah, so quite a lot of people, 17 people are in the middle of a transformation right now. Quite a few have been through one and succeeded, which is good to see, and a couple of people have been through one and failed. So just wait for a couple more votes and I'll share. So yeah, hopefully everyone can see the poll results on there. So like I said, 18 out of the 34 odd people on the call today are in the middle of a transformation right now. So that'd be super interesting to pull some insights into what you're going through. 9 have been through a transformation that's succeeded. So Daniel's going to touch on kind of what does succession, what does succeeding in transformation look like? Some have failed. So I think we can probably learn quite a lot from those who failed, and one person's answer, I don't know what transformation. So a good mix. Hopefully a lot to pull out of there.
Right.
Cool. So I mean, in terms of what does the current change and transformation look like, Daniel? What are you seeing at the moment?
Right. So, and this is really interesting because I mean, one of my privileges is that I really speak with a lot of different companies, or I've spoken to a lot of different companies over the last years. And maybe just as a side comment on CoachHub, for those of you who don't know what it is, I mean, we are really pretty much the fastest growing company in the learning space or change enablement space. We've grown from when I started, when we were only 5 people, which was in end of September 2018, to now 850 people globally. working with companies from Amazon to Fujitsu, Schneider Electric, Mercedes, and so forth. Basically here over the last years, pretty much, yeah, once again, having had the insights into hundreds of companies and hundreds of executives I've spoken to, I think, you know, what is reflected here is a little bit different what I hear, at least in terms of success rate and in terms of the data that also prestigious consultancy firms such as McKinsey and others, you know, put out there in terms of success rate of transformations, which is actually that most transformations fail, which doesn't mean that they are complete failures, but it at least means that they haven't achieved the results that they were set out to do, right? I recently also listened to a podcast on McKinsey where it was more about the smart manufacturing, digitalization, IoT, where someone said it should actually, if you're really striving for a digital transformation, try to really increase EBITDA by 10 to 15%. You know, there should be some financial KPIs behind it. There's no really sense in having transformations just for the sake of having transformations. And, you know, the move to hybrid working that we had to go through is not really a transformation itself, right? You know, transformations really triggered by a fundamentally new business models, new technologies you're adopting, and new ways of working. And that's not just what we are going through as a society right now, which can definitely be described as a transformation. I think it's also very, very hard if I look at the current process, and I think most reflected is the number one. You know, we are in the middle of a transformation right now. I think definitely most companies, no matter if it's, you know, banking, who are being disrupted by fintech and need to start launching their own apps, or the automotive industry, which are changing across so many levels, a totally new business model in terms of, you know, going through over-the-air updates and agent models of dealers to actually new ways of productions and e-mobility instead of combustion engine, you know, becoming a software technology company rather than a manufacturing hardware company. You know, those are the real big transformations that are happening. And in a way, most industries are affected by it. And what I really hear a lot, and this is also what's really reflected in the data, is that transformations don't fail because of a, you know, lack of a certain piece of technology or, you know, the wrong processes. It really, and this is also reflected on McKinsey's data, but also I looked at agile transformation failures. It's really, actually, it's between 70 and 84% of them are said to be failures, as in not having the results that they were set out to achieve, or not having sustainable results. That's also one thing that happens a lot, which is there is short-term transformation success, but not sustainable transformation success. And that very, very often boils down to two factors. And that is number one, resistance to change from the employee side. And number two, inadequate management behavior, right? And of course, the one affects the other one, right? And then only very few, like about 1/3 of the failure reasons have been attributed to other reasons that, once again, are more on the technology side of things or budget or processes. So it's very interesting that we see that most transformation and change processes fail or don't have the returns that we expected, but they fail in most cases because of people reasons. And really that has to do, and this is also another interesting research that I recently found, is that the transformations that address mindset as part of their capability building to support the transformation are 4 times more successful than others. And that is really key, because mindset, which is made up of functional and dysfunctional beliefs that individuals have, is ultimately what drives individual behaviors, is ultimately what influences group dynamics, and really creates the patterns that ultimately is what you see then on top of the iceberg in terms of behaviors that do or do not support the transformation efforts, right? And this is what I hear a lot, and really sometimes I just have conversation with executives where I just pull up the slide on why we see and data shows transformation fail, and then just pause there and have them speak about it. And I remember a conversation with a chief digital officer who was like 45 minutes, almost a monologue, sharing with me previous failure experiences where he said no transformation anymore without a large-scale change enablement program, which by contrast to what reality is, and this is what I see, and I'd be super curious to learn more about the audience's input, is what the least budget goes into is on change management. It's always something, oh, let's do something. Right now, it's like face-to-face time with seniors, some e-learnings, and some classroom trainings, right? But this is really not what moves the needle at all when it comes to behavior change, because they have extremely limited impact on behavior change, right? So that's maybe where I'm going to pause here for some observations and some insights here.
Yeah, Nicholas has just posted in the chat, the trick is to change daily behaviours of people to achieve true and sustainable transformation. At GSK, we applied peer-to-peer principles, leveraging the power of informal key influencers to transform our culture for the past 3 years with some success. So Nicholas, I don't know if whether you're able to take this on.
Nico will talk about one thing that I definitely was about to mention. It's also, who do you work with for your transformation? And I don't think there is a better person than Nico to talk about it.
Well, perfect timing, Nico. There you go.
No, thanks for that. Yeah, no, we've tried to apply peer-to-peer, the power of the peer-to-peer to really transform behaviors. The assumption is that people are going to change their behaviors if they see around them people they trust who've changed their behaviors themselves and who are encouraging others to do the same. And so you work with those influencers, and you leave the power they have in the informal world. So you don't ask them to run workshops or things like that. You just let them play their role in the informal world. Then it can lead to great things. And so we've seen big success, I think, in some aspects of what we did in culture transformation. But you can basically apply it to any sort of transformation if you work with the right people who have influence over others. There's a way to do that. And certainly you cannot only rely on them. You also have to have leaders in the formal world also in action, but that worked quite well. So but there are a number of rules to follow and traps not to fall into for this to work.
And what are some of those traps or typical mistakes that you might have seen?
Well, one of the typical mistakes is when I mentioned to ask your influencers to do, everything, and so ask to put them in the spotlight. The moment they come into the spotlight, lose the credibility they need, because they become like the voice of management. Management is trying to get to people through them, and then they lose the power, and then you lose everything to follow, actually. Confuse communication with change. Communication is nice, it's useful, it helps people to understand how important the topic is for you and your company, but is not going to make them change their behaviors. So you can communicate, be very clear. Usually we say, oh, we haven't been clear enough, but it's not about the clarity, it's about the different channels that you want to use. And in order for some people to change, just the formal channels and communication, in my experience, is not enough to get people to change. And that's what Daniel was saying earlier about the real true transformation comes through behavioral change, and communication is not going to change the behaviors of people.
Yeah, exactly. And it just remains, and thank you so much, Nico. And I think there was a little bit of a cut off, maybe it was just for me, but I think the connection, but I know your case really well. And for anyone who really wants to deep dive into that, I highly recommend connecting with Nico and reading also his posts about GSK case, because this is definitely one of the things. It's not just, we know the transformations only, and this is, I like to quote McKinsey, so really putting out transformations don't happen through initiatives, they happen through people changing their behavior. And they also don't, just putting out a program that consists of managers giving some keynotes and town halls, that's just understanding on a cognitive level, right? And I can really bring in a concrete example of a company that's, I would say most of you know the company, it's in the automotive sector, as one of the largest suppliers. They really went about measuring their transformation progress. They built up a change cockpit, and they really, made a traffic light system, right? Green, yellow, red. And it's so interesting, like when you ask the whole, and they took it seriously, because sometimes like, yeah, let's ask a couple of managers how it's going. No, you actually ask the whole population. You go down to the factories, right, to the shop floor, and ask, is the transformation actually something you understand? Is it reaching you? Is it not? And on the question of, do you understand that we have to transform? They had extremely high scores all across the board. Everyone understands that we have to transform. But on the question, whether do you see change being role modeled by your managers, the lowest score of all, right? So, and this is what we see in any transformation. It's, yes, we understand we have to change, but then is the role model really happening? And then the question is also, who needs to show that role modeling? What Nico says, and this is 100% what I agree with, is the informal influences. And by the way, we will speak to in a bit how to really identify the informal influences, because it's not actually the top leaders that are the most important for transformations. It's the informal influences who, and usually it's like 3%, who influence the behavior of the remaining 90% of the employees, or 87, right? And only if that level changes, and there is countless research that on the top, the perceived transformation success rate is relatively high, but it's like 10 times lower in the lower management levels and in the employee management levels. And if there is no transformation, there is no transformation, right? And so, this is what I really wanted to bring forward also. And what I will speak to later is like, work with the informal influencers. The leaders also have to role model it, because if only the informal influencers role model it and the leaders do not at all, you have a huge issue. And then there is actually more negative consequences potentially of the whole transformation. Because one thing, and I was actually just looking at some research from the American Psychology Association, the impact of transformations and change processes on people, mental and physical health, is ridiculous. It's like people who go through intense change processes and transformation processes are over 4 times more likely to have psychological and physical issues after they have gone through the transformation change process, right? So we should never actually neglect the fact that this does something to people. And if you don't enable the right people, if you don't invest in proper enablement, and you let that transformation, you say we need to transform, but you don't follow up with the right actions, that's super counterintuitive. Yeah? And it's gonna actually have a worse state than before the transformation. That's also many times what I actually hear, right? Because people, they are not idiots, right? I mean, employees understand you going out there and saying we need to transform, and then acting in a totally non-supportive or opposite way, and don't invest in enablement at all.
Yeah. And on that point around kind of how change management is seen from the leadership team, I'm just going to launch a poll now, because it'd be interesting to see some audience insight into whether leaders invest a lot in change, whether there's little investment or no investment, or if they've seen leaders within organizations that don't even realize that change is needed, which is...
I, by the way, just a comment, Jana, totally agree with you, right? Many willing to steer others to change, but are not interested in changing themselves. I see this day in and day out, right? It was like, okay, why don't we start there with you? It's like, yeah, no, but it's the others, And actually, also interesting data point, which I found, is that if managers actually are perceived by the employees to really role model the change, transformations are 5.3 times more likely to succeed. Right? So this is actually something really, it sounds so simple, but it's actually rarely ever happening. And this is one of the areas where we tackle with the one-on-one coaching at scale to really help people role model the behaviors. But looking forward to seeing the results of the poll.
Mark saying, do what I say, not what I do. Yeah. Carol, I see all talk, but not the supportive behavior. Yeah, they sound like they're invested, but the behavior doesn't follow.
We overestimate the role of brains to achieve change. I like that comment as well, Nico. And also there was a comment before, I think from Mark. Oh my God, sorry. What the hell? Some good comments, so keep them coming. One reason for failure: many people assume if I understand what is needed, I will change. However, understanding is the booby price. Exactly. Yeah, it's not about cognitive understanding. Little investment.
I'm just sharing the poll results now. So yeah, the kind of front runner on that was there was little investment in leaders. A handful of people said that leaders invested a lot in change.
Yeah, so that is there is as many people that reply with our leaders don't even realize change is needed, then there are people that say there is a lot of investment, right? I mean, that is already for me very clear answer there. And once again, also what 100% I see in the conversations I have in the data. A question to you, and maybe you can just reply in the chat. I have actually found a study that has analyzed 350 organizations on how much percentage of the overall transformation budget is being used for change enablement, right? From a people perspective. What's the percentage that you think is the average that organizations that actually are successful in their transformations of the overall transformation budgets is being invested in change? If you could just add maybe a number, that would be great. Like a percentage, like a guess. Invested in change management and people enablement side of change management, right?
Not enough.
7, 15.
10%, but very optimistic.
%5.
Yeah.
Okay, so basically I've had a good result when putting 20% of behavioral consideration. All right, so it's interesting, these answers, because I think some of the answers reflect some frustrations or something that people have seen in the organization. The 20% is rather close, but still not enough. It's actually 28%. So I'm gonna actually put it here. So happy to, it was a study done in Germany, but I'm happy to also reference it here. So 28%, right? And now that is definitely, I think, higher than anyone put here. And it's also much less than most transformations, transformation budgets account change management for. And for me, it's just very, I mean, the answer is very clear, right? I mean, if there is no change, no investment in change, very little, or just like it goes alongside, just communicate about the change regularly, right? That's what the top managers say to the middle managers, and the middle managers say to the lower managers. And then one of the interesting aspects as well, which I found from data from Innovizer, a company that I really appreciate in the space of network analysis, which is also a tool that Nico used for GSK, is actually that less than 1 in 6 managers actually follow through with a change and transformation enablement and talking about it and doing after 3 months, right? So a combination of poor investment and no actual discipline and pulling through transformations take so much time. How many times do I get the question, so Mr. Breitweiser, how long does it take to transform, right? It's like, well, and A will hopefully never end, right? And B, definitely with that mindset, we probably not get there.
And in terms of, you touched on a few of the interventions, so like the one-on-one coaching, Daniel, what have you seen businesses use successfully that has worked? And I'll launch a poll in a second where we can ask the audience, but if you could give us some insight into some of the interventions that have been used.
Yeah, so basically, I mean, as I don't want to make a big sales show out of here, right? But I mean, of course, when it comes to mindset change, and I think Jana said that, right? There's a significant difference between training skills and supporting the mindset shift, right? So first of all, I'm not advocating for only one of the tools will make it, right? So it's not just working with influencers. It's also not just working with coaching, so that's really important. However, and there is, we have many cases, and one of the persons who is in our advisory board as well, Daniel Ulrich, they have found over a 5-year transformation that when they work with one-on-one coaching on really enabling managers for a longer period of time, not just a month or 2 or 3, they have found that the KPIs across the whole board, right, from operational costs of the teams, but also really the customer satisfaction has a 3x compared to the ones that haven't been one-on-one coached, right? And you can definitely do that internally. However, if you do internal one-on-one coaching, there are some pitfalls that are very important to consider, because if you really go for one-on-one internal coaching, and this is what they did, they actually qualified over 400 people internally, and they were full-time coaches, right? Not just colleagues who on the side try to coach others. And by the way, when we speak about coaching, we actually mean systemic coaching, business coaching, that is really not just the better micromanaging as a service that many times actually is what managers do when they think they coach. It's also not about consulting, giving unsolicited advice. It's also not about mentoring, it's coaching, right? So it's really sitting down with a person for an hour and going to the core of their mental model, right? Like the operating model, their limiting beliefs, rewiring what they actually need to achieve, you know, reflecting on current experiences, past experiences, and then going into a solution focus and working on goals and working on options on how they can, for themselves and for the teams, really drive behavior change. And not only doing that once, behavior change takes time. Every one of us knows this from going to the gym. I'm horrible at it. You know, I'm struggling with, you know, having my routine. I don't know if I'll get there. I'm definitely know I will if I get a personal coach. But for some reason, I don't apply the professional coaching philosophy yet to my personal life when it comes to that. So behavior change takes time. There's all of this stuff on 20 days, changing a habit, but it takes months. When we look at our data, we see the biggest really behavior change that people go through after month 5 to 7, right? So if you'd ask me, how much time do people need to work with a one-on-one coaching setting to really, for us to see behavior change, it would be around 6 months, yeah? So more is more, right? And also here, there is some data that actually, if you work on capability programs for 18 months, that's where you have really significant shareholder returns. So it's definitely not that one-off training, you know, or 1 or 2 times coaching that will cut it, not at all. So one-on-one coaching as the key to behavior change, to mindset change, which leads to behavior change. But there is the second thing, which I really want to make very clear here, and that is group dynamics, right? So group dynamics are absolutely crucial for behavior change to not only manifest in individuals, but then to manifest in an organization, in teams, and hence the organization, right? If I look at the behavior change starts with me, it has to go through my team, and that will accelerate an organization. Of course, the informal influencers and the connectors, who are usually the 3% of the organization, have a real big power to play here, right? So if we transform them as well, it's probably more important than even the senior management, unless the senior management is totally not on board with the change and transformation. But honestly, then the whole transformation process is anyways nonsense, right? I mean, then it won't work. So one-on-one coaching and then interventions that really drive an understanding and an awareness, a collective mindset change, a collective awareness of how we function as a team, how the individuals interact with each other, and how we need to adjust our behaviors as a team to facilitate the transformation and to really get those behaviors that we need to change. Actually, what we call it nowadays is the KBIs, so the key behavior indicators. Through the key behavior indicators, you get to the KPIs, right? We all know that. I mean, why do projects fail? You know, we think it's resources, we think it's, I don't know what, it's because of a lack of good communication skills, conflict management skills, creating clarity, you know. So in the end of the day, the combination of one-on-one mindset and behavior change with group dynamic change and behavior change, this is where profitability comes in, right? So we are working on some projects together where we actually do one-on-one coaching, but actually we first do a business simulation so that people really understand, okay, how does my behavior affect others, right? How do we need to work together? And then they come out with a behavioral analysis of their behavior. They come out with individual commitments and with team commitments. And if we repeat that cycle of one-on-one enablement and group enablement over a longer period of time, connected to the key behaviors that we need for our transformation to succeed, this is what will lead ultimately behavior change and transformation success. Now, I'm not also saying that that means that there should not be any communication from leadership about that transformation. You know, it will also lead to role modeling, which can also be achieved through interventions, that there should be trainings about certain skills. Of course, a transformation to a smart factory will require different skills and data analytics. That's obvious, right? but it will require even more important communication skills so we can make data-informed decisions and psychological safety in the bottom of the shop floor in order for data to actually do its job, right? Because you can have as many machines as you want to do predictive maintenance. If the people in the shop floor don't trust their manager and don't have the psychological safety to communicate mistakes, then the whole business case doesn't work, right? So those are just some of the thoughts. So do training, definitely for skills, there needs to be some knowledge. Where do we want to go? What are the behaviors we want to see? And then invest in one-on-one coaching and really impactful experiential learning designs. Those could be very well-designed workshops, group coachings, team coachings, to really get to the core of a collective mindset change in combination.
Thanks, Daniel. Yeah, and I think Jana and Greg have both alluded to the same thing around time and space being the biggest investment. So taking the time out to have those interventions, getting under the surface to find the reasons for resistance. I think you were going to share that slide on the mountain, right, Daniel? I think that might be.
Yeah, I can maybe. Yeah, we don't want to do death by PowerPoint. I know it's already a little bit past. But I mean, what I just said, right? I can just summarize it in basically very briefly. Let me just give you this slide, and then maybe happy to also open conversation. Yeah, so right. So I mean, if you look on the right side, right, we see the iceberg, right? And in the end of the day, observable behavior has a lot below it, right? And it has patterns that have caused this behavior to unfold. And at the bottom of it, you really see the limiting beliefs that form, or functional, dysfunctional beliefs that form mindset, right? So in combination with group dynamics, patterns form, and that will result in observable behavior that does or does not support the transformation. So it's really important to identify the dysfunctional patterns and mindset, to work on it in a one-on-one setting. And also when we look here, from the me to the team to the organization. Once again, training is crucial, but training will not change mindsets and behaviors, right? So that is really, you can only go on an ongoing one-on-one basis to really get to the core, the limiting beliefs, the assumptions that you have about yourself, about the group, about your work, and then get them in a different direction. Actually, I've put together a little intervention map that I'm also happy to share with you. I tried to put together. So it's also, once again, also here, it's, maybe just it's a lot of content, right? But maybe you can just, I did that for a client who wanted to have a comparison. Because I mean, very often people go for the seemingly cheaper option, right? But in the end of the day, they might make things worse or not achieve the results that they want. And once again, as we talk about behavior change, it's really about which interventions actually drive behavior change on an individual or on a group level, and which of the interventions also are scalable, right? Are they measurable? How long is the time to value? And also, can you do on-the-job learning, or do I have to pull people out every third day for a one-day training, which definitely will cause more frustration than it will do good, right? And then, of course, looking at the costs, and this, once again, this here doesn't mean that you should only work with one-on-one coaching, but it's a combination of interventions, and you need to map them, what actually will cause the behavior change, and also, really important, what is the sustainability of a tool as a standalone? One-on-one coaching for a one-year period will cause behavior change on an ongoing basis, and then manifest new behaviors and mindsets that will live beyond that. Doing 2 trainings of 4 hours within 2 weeks, people have forgotten 90% of the content. So you rather maybe combine the two and help with the one-on-one coaching after the trainings to really help people to apply what they've learned in the day-to-day context, right? So this is once again why I love so much the combination of profitability simulations and one-on-one coaching as an example.
Thanks, Daniel. Does anybody in the audience want to share any insight into what they've seen, what combination of interventions they've seen succeed or fail, or want to share any stories, any war stories? Feel free to take yourself off mute or raise a hand.
Yes, please.
Jana.
Yes, I'm happy to share some stories or maybe a development, because I started as change manager and did change manager training in a huge group concern, like in a group company, so very large, one of the largest in Germany. And being put on the first change management projects there, everything I learned from failure, right? Really, because I think we did more or less everything wrong in terms of the things that didn't have to do with project management. And there's such a huge difference between project management and change management, right? And that was in 2016. And in this change manager training, that was the first time ever that I heard about basic beliefs. And I found it fascinating because it was about the basic beliefs of an organization. So it's really also understanding the culture of your company, and from there getting a better understanding how to change and how far change can go, right? I mean, also imagine your company so far is a fish, but you want the company to climb on the tree. That will take much longer, or maybe never be possible. So really be aware of the culture and what your company is about as well at that stage. And I really also found it fascinating that a lot of times there's such a huge disconnect between the conceptual level of the company, so project managers, all the people that are close to the board members, and the central aspects of the company making a lot of project ideas and plans, and the people that are expected to do things, to really fulfill it, to transform. And so many times I've seen it failing because the people that are meant to do it are not taken into account early enough, not seriously enough, and not with the right interventions. I left this company after I have been there for 18 years in 2018. I had a long journey there in between. I'm now working in a company that comes from the startup culture. And what I can say there is, we might not be as good in classical project management, but we are much better in being close to the and in taking into account of how do we need to enable our leaders to also cope with the change, to support their people, and also to really not fear to go into the change themselves, because leaders are really special people here, right? A lot of times leaders are expected to don't do mistakes, to have it all right, to be the person that is spot on all the time. But in the end, they are also human. They are simply humans, just like everyone else. So this aspect of it's okay to have resistance, but have support for getting into the resistance, that's important for all the people in the company. Yeah, and this is what my biggest shout out is, really to kind of grow something like a coaching culture in a company. That is the biggest strength you can have for challenging each other, but at the same time having a basis for psychological safety as well, and working and developing a culture within this coaching culture, because it's always mindset before toolset, and everything else, in all honesty, is a waste of time and money. It is. It makes people feel good to say we put so much investment here and there and there.
PowerPoint.
It's yeah. It's a waste of time and money. Please don't do it. Really not.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Jana.
Jana.
100% thumbs up to everything you said. I mean,
Thanks.
And by the way, I put it in the chat. You said one thing really important: data, right? Data. Like we're working right now with a company, whole team. It's a really large client within a function, and we actually work with the influence analysis to identify the 3% who influence the 90%.
Mm-hmm.
We also work with a company, Denison, who does a culture analytics assessment.
I love it. Denison culture analysis is awesome.
Here we go, right? Over 1 million data points, super solid. So we did the culture analytics first. We had the uncomfortable conversation with the management, confronting them with it. There was a 360 based on the culture. And this was beautiful because the things that have emerged are amazing. And we had a strong CEO who believed in that and who really said, okay, we need to have this conversation. We need data. We need to back it up. Then we went to influence analysis. We shared these insights with them and enabled the leaders and the influencers with one-on-one coaching, and then do a change monitor a couple of months after, and continue also the group reflection. So it's again, here's some of these elements in there, but what you said, Jana, I couldn't agree more. So many times change and transformation is a PowerPoint topic, right? We've done 3 programs, 2 keynotes and 3 seminars, and it's good. No, first of all, if the data is not there, and if the management is not willing to collect the data, there are so many tools, right? Then isn't just one of them. You know, then I'm always wondering, how serious are you about it? You know, I brought up the example with the change cockpit of this other company we work with. This is the basis, right? Because I also agree with it. Just coaching, if you coach everyone as example, a coaching culture could be a result, but the direction, change and transformation should have a direction.
Yeah,
we should know what we will change, right? The big culture.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And when there is one thing that I would really highly recommend everybody who faces resistance, and there's no transformation without resistance, right? I think that's the first thing, to embrace resistance. There is none. You need to embrace resistance. And the one thing that I really, really invite everybody to be aware of is, if you face resistance, ask yourself, is it coming from, I don't get it? Is it coming from, I don't like it? Or is it coming from, I don't trust you? This, to me, is the most powerful question to ask and find out what it is about, because we always have this tendency, or let's say companies, and I would say companies who are driven by people who love control, always try to give more focus on people don't get it, whereas most of the times that's not the reason for resistance. It comes from, I don't like it, or I don't trust you. And yeah, thanks.
There are some hands up.
Yeah, I think there was there's some thumbs up going up, and Greg mentioned some resistance internally. So hopefully what Jana just touched on was helpful, Greg, but I know we've got conversation in the next couple of weeks, so perhaps we can do a bit of a deeper dive on that. Will, I think your hand was up. Did you want to make a...
Yeah, hi, thanks. It was. The conversation started going where I wanted to contribute, but I'll just nutshell what I was going to say is, we've talked about cultural assessments, we've talked about leadership capability, we've talked about understanding levels of psychological safety. As someone who's led transformation, but as someone who's driven transformation and from a program and a consultant side as well, where we've succeeded the most, when I say we, the teams that I've had in the past, has been where we've taken that first step and not only done a broad cultural assessment and a leadership assessment, but we've done an on-the-ground readiness assessment of the people who will be affected. And I'm not talking about the superficial change readiness assessments that one gets in 2x2 packs and such. I'm talking about working with a team to understand their neurological, psychological readiness for the fundamental shift that is going to come their way. Because what we're doing when we do specifically whole-scale transformation or large-scale transformation is we're introducing vast quantities of unknown. And unknown equals unsafe, uncertain, etc. And the moment you get an individual or a group in a space of, I'm not safe, I don't know what's happening here, the first challenge is to get them re-engaged in the moment, in reality, then re-engaged in the topic, because the behaviors become defensive, withdrawal, etc. And collaboration and that bonding together doesn't happen. So that's where I've been the most successful, is actually working with people right at that basic level of, how the hell are you actually? And are you up for this type of challenge? And what would you need to succeed? And then bank that into the process that comes in, that 20 to 30% investment in the people that needs to be a part of that transformation budget. Without that, transformation just becomes a railroading exercise of new systems, new process, etc., and then can deliver much more harm to people and the organization than benefit was intended. So that was my sort of summary of what had been discussed.
Thanks a lot, Will.
Thanks. A lot of thumbs up from the rest of the audience on that point. Daniel, did you want to share a bit more insight into how CoachHub kind of approach a change or transformation project with a client, and give us a bit of a case study on that, just to share that?
Yeah, I'm a bit of, I could, right? But I'm just aware of the time, because it would I could show something for 3 to 4 minutes, but I also want to take the audience. I mean, I could do 10 or 15 minutes more. Maybe just not a hands up, but in the chat, little case study, or rather 7 minutes more of conversation. Be happy to get your thought, or both for another 20 minutes. I mean, either way.
Another session. Case study, I think. Bridget, Brian, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'm just gonna, I'm just gonna very briefly, I mean, once again, I could, it's a very high level. I shared already something, but I would do it, and once again, happy to also do 10 minutes longer to get any insights from others. Let me just see, where is it? Okay. Right, so what I'm going to present is a very brief journey that we are on with Fujitsu, who you might all know, Japanese company, who is really on a transition from that hardware data center providing company to really becoming a digital transformation service company. And we've started a journey with a product leadership here in Europe. It's interesting, we actually expand ever since, also to Japan for cultural transformation initiatives. But very, very briefly, just a couple of, maybe also I understand the logic, also how we approach some of these. And I really like actually that they have worked with the teams before. What Will actually said, in this case, Fujitsu has worked with the teams first. They have put in months of crowdsourcing work with the teams to actually understand what is the mindset we currently have versus the mindset that we need for the transformation, right? And I'm happy to share, I mean, these are some slides from Fujitsu. We presented this together. Mindset change is the key to digital transformation. So as you can see here, the shift from an IT infrastructure company to a partner for digital transformation, a change in mindset, right? I think here really nicely Fujitsu explained. So we have the technology, all of that cloud, data science, IoT, blockchain. We have the methodologies, right? So the scaled agile, design thinking, and so forth. But at the core is really the mindset. So a digital mindset is not merely the ability to use technology. It is a set of attitudes and behaviors that enable people and organizations to foresee possibilities for customers. But then they didn't just stop there, right? It's saying, okay, this is what the mindset means, but these are actually the mindset that they understood they have to work on. And this is where they had the gaps, right? So they crowdsourced Fujitsu digital mindset and transform it by targeted initiatives. So as you can see here, none of this is probably super new to you, right? But put into context, I think it's very powerful. So customer-centric, visionary, what does that mean? Trusting, being a value enabler. I like that one really a lot. Being an active learner. So they set out with this and then said, okay, so how do we now actually get these behaviors to be lived in day to day and support people along their journey, right? And then we've already been in a partnership, and then we approached that topic together. So they set up a program. There were more elements around this, right? But as an example here, so they had a program, so the digital mindset leadership journey, where they had learning labs, which were 90-minute facilitated group sessions that they did internally over a longer period of time. And then they added the one-on-one coaching as a layer on top of this, right? Now, we didn't just do one-on-one coaching into the blue, but we actually then understood, and this is, by the way, the CoachHub platform. So just very briefly, there is an end-to-end journey, and this is actually how we managed to scale one-on-one coaching. We have over 3,500 coaches, but also a multi-platform solution to really do everything from matching to having the coaching one-on-one, also exercises and assessment for yourself, and really tracking your own progress over time. And you will meet with a coach usually every 2 weeks for 45 minutes, in this case for 6 months. And we adjusted our platform according, and also the analytics behind it, because we work with companies, not just with providing coaching at scale, but then also sharing back with them, what are your key strengths? What are your key development areas? And what topics are people most focused on? And I will show you what in this case the topics were. And I don't think it will come to a big surprise. So what have we done? We have actually done a couple of customizations. So we have actually briefed the specific coach pool that was matched with the leaders, right? So they select the coach based on their chemistry. and we brief them about the digital mindset journey. We have a post analysis that we will be running on from analysis perspective. We have adjusted the focus areas on the CoachHub platform to the digital mindset. So the digital mindsets that you saw, those 8 mindsets, we have adjusted, and people were able to select these focus areas on the platform, rate themselves, set their milestones accordingly. So we have customized our standard CoachHub framework to the digital mindset journey. And we also provided, we have micro learnings that were connected to the digital mindset for people to deep dive in between the sessions on certain mindsets, behaviors, and additional content that Fujitsu has in place to help people make the shift, right? And here is an interesting overview. Here is some data that we can show after a couple of months. So what are the topics that people have actually discussed with the coaches, right? And here is the proof, once again, that digital transformations are not about digital and not about technology, right? The digital enabler was the least focused topic. The number, I mean, you can see it here, being visionary. And this is actually, especially, this was a top leadership for the country, but middle manager on a global scale, really being visionary about that change and role modeling. Being customer-centric. Customer-centric is also an exercise of adjusting the behaviors of you and your teams. And really interesting, being an active learner, and Jana said that before, I think, right, free to fail, right? So these are the topics that people actually worked on together with a coach. And sorry, it's in German, but actually the last question here is a data point on, do I think that the topics that I discussed in the coaching will help me to accomplish the changes that I want and we want? And we have a very high score of 4.7 out of 5. And this is actually what we have after every session, people rate that. So there is dozens of feedbacks every month. And of course, this is what we provide, but there is much more that you can do in analytics, culture assessment. They have designed a digital readiness survey with PwC, which they're redoing. So there's more to this. And here is a little quote that I can actually say. So, you know, my personal change efforts have been made concrete once again. We clarified together what I can do to also help my team embrace the digital mindset, right? And this is how transformation mindset change travels, for the leaders to understand for themselves what they have to change, and then also helping their team to change along the journey, right? And last but not least, here, maybe just an insight, we track every program that we have on, you know, do people really change their perspectives? Do they gain an understanding about their fundamental strengths and weaknesses for their transformation? Have they gained new competencies? And have they integrated new successful behaviors, also based on feedback from others? And also have they increased their goal achievement through the one-on-one coaching? And you can see it's quite a high score. This is after 3 to 6 months on average. So we can see after 3 to 6 months working with a one-on-one coach, there is an 80% also a secondhand validated behavior change, but it takes time. And of course, it takes more to analyze this and to put it into a program, into a perspective that really fits together. Once again, also here in that program, I really like that analytics part. I like the mindset part. I like the individual and the group dynamic part and how we fit into this. So maybe that was helpful, and happy to get your questions or additional thoughts on the topic of discussion, and happy to do maybe a follow-up at any given point in the next weeks.
Yeah, I think based on the enthusiasm from the audience, we might have to do a follow-up session, Daniel. You've been roped into that already. Does anyone have any questions? I'm just really conscious of time. We've run a bit over and we've lost a few people due to time, but does anyone have any questions? And then we'll wrap things up. Lots of thank yous. All right. What we'll do is we will...
I have one, yes.
Sorry, yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, but 2.5 to 3 years of social disruption on a fundamental and global scale. I'd be very interested to get a sense of where your head is on how that's going to impact transformation agendas now versus 3 years ago. The levels of individual and collective safety, certainty in the workplace, hybrid work patterns, not what people... This topic is increasingly important now. What's your view?
I mean, it is, and I get really excited about this, right? But at the same time, also frustrated, right? Because it is even more important, because if you look at the fact that, you know, increasing isolation and also the numbers that people actually feel disconnected has, I mean, 3-4x, right? and achieving transformation whilst the ways of working are being adjusted through the digital disruption, and then having the transformation layer on top of it, it's one transformation and change process that leads into another one. And I mean, you can see the great resignation, the big shift, whatever you want to call it, is not just a result of, I don't know what, it's a fundamental result of a poor leadership and toxic cultures and a lack of good change management and transformation management. Really, I mean, this is the number one reason. And I can really, in a way, I find it shocking, but I also find it, I think, hopefully it will be a wake-up call to some organizations. And I can highly recommend you listen to the podcast of Brené Brown with MIT, where they published their recent research. Jana is nodding on toxic cultures, and really they analyzed what does that mean? What's the lack of inclusivity? Why do people leave? It's all based on that. And I just, you know, that makes it all more complex with less people, because the thing is, who are those people that are leaving? It's not the ones who you technically are already disrupting your products. It's the one who are actually driving your projects, and they have been leaving. So you've been seeing a lot of top performers leave who were critical to your transformation and change, right? So maybe just some thoughts.
Thanks, Daniel. I think we'll probably call it time there, because I think we could probably. But thank you so much to everyone who's still on the call for joining. We'll be sharing a document with just some key takeaways and signposts to any stats slides that Daniel provided, the podcast, like we mentioned at the start. Any feedback or comments, very much welcome. Please email me directly with those. And yeah, thank you so much for joining us on the next webinar, and we'll see you all very soon.
Thank you all. Great
Bye.
discussion.